On tonight's episode of Stage Door Live, we'll be hitting the hot topics with Peter Power and Romy CRUAñAS. I will be joined in studio by Liz Roach to chat about her new show, and finally our panel will be completed by Peter Jordan for the big debate. On tonight's episode of Stage Door Live,
it's a mixture thing. So what we're
culture union.
Give me a bit of time, give me a bit of space, I think,
which is crucial to our identity.
Hello and welcome to the new and improved Stage Door Live, and thanks to the support of Axis and Ballymun and Dublin City Council, we're broadcasting from the Axis Media Hub. We've got a great show for you tonight, but before all that, let's take a look at the top news items from Irish theatre this week. Take it away, Sue.
Thank you, Janice. Let's dive right in. In breaking news, Tánaiste Leo Varadkar has stated he is increasingly confident that both outdoor and indoor dining will be possible this summer. Outdoor dining and drinking is set to return on the 7th of June with table service only, no time limits, and no requirement to buy a meal in the case of drinking. Tánaiste most recently stated there will not be limits on numbers of customers total, but with only 6 sitting at one table. The Committee on Enterprise was informed that indoor dining will resume early July. This is being discussed amid government preparations for the reopening over the summer months. The Artists' Union of Ireland Praxis has successfully set up a meeting with the Arts Council Ireland on the 24th of May to ensure that voices are heard during the meeting. Members are advised to check their emails and have the survey filled out by Thursday, the 20th of May. Irish Equity has organized an online Zoom meeting this Sunday, the 23rd of May at 3 p.m. The meeting will discuss the ratification process for any future arrangements. The registration for the meeting is available now and is set to close tomorrow at 6 p.m. While no date has yet been set for theatres, Minister Martin has stated that pilot live music events could take place as early as June. Earlier this month, experiments took place in the UK, which nightclub settings containing 3,000 people were tested for transmission. Attendees had to provide a negative test result to participate. These events are part of the Events Research Programme, which is also overseeing crowds attending events including the Football Association Cup Final and a music festival held in Liverpool's Sefton Park. Minister Martin was in contact with the organizers of the Experimental Music Festival in Sefton Park, which has 5,000 attendees. Similar large-scale test events are being discussed in Ireland, with antigen testing playing an important role. This is despite the government warning against antigen testing after Lidl began selling them. Phoebe Theatre Company has taken over Untitled Galway. Phoebe will now be responsible for the programming for the next 3 years and will also be using the space for its own work. Derek O'Tourish said, "It's a great matter of pride for us that a Gael-talked company is taking directorship of the National Irish Language Theatre for the first time. Untitled has a strong brand and is one of the most beautiful theatre spaces in the country." A reminder to all professional artists based in Ireland to participate in the survey issued by Arts Council Ireland. The deadline for participation is Friday, the 28th of May. For freelance artists, don't forget to share your concerns on pay and conditions on the pay scale survey at TheatreMaker.ie by the 31st of May. Several Irish dancers and companies have been shortlisted by the UK Critics Circle for National Dance Awards. Michael Keegan-Dolan Choktusa has been shortlisted in the Best Modern Choreography category with Mom. Rachel Poiret was also shortlisted in the Outstanding Female Modern Performance with Mom. Also in the Outstanding Female Modern Performance is Una Doherty and Dance Umbrella for the piece Hope Hunt and the Ascension into Lazarus. Una Doherty is currently Dublin Dance Festival Artist in Residence 2020-2022. Last week, Social Justice Matters, the podcast of Social Justice Ireland, discussed universal basic income. Sean Ward, a board member of SJI and a long-term advocate of basic income, showed a potential timeline wherein the government could implement a basic income scheme from the 1st of January 2022. Ward states that the initiative would have minimal cost to the Exchequer, National Campaign for the Arts, as well as Arts and Culture Recovery Task Force have called for similar measures. The Mermaid Arts Centre had a call for applications to their Associate Artist Scheme Transform, which offered some financial stability to 3 artists from Wicklow and 1 from outside Wicklow. The 4 artists selected are Mary Duffy, Eureka Higashikawa, Shia R. Joyce, and Emmett Kirwan. Mermaid are part of a scheme offering financial stability to artists once again. The Southeast Venue Network is open to applications for its new Southeast Venue Network Artist Bursary Award, funded by Arts Council Ireland. This new bursary will provide financial and network support to an artist based in Southeast Ireland whose art practice has been significantly impacted by COVID-19 restrictions. The 7 Artist Bursary Award is open to artists of all disciplines living in the southeast region of Carlow, Kilkenny, Waterford, Wicklow and Wexford, who have presented or exhibited work in professional context within the last 5 years. Included in this award is a €9,000 bursary to support development over the span of 1 year.
If you find value in Stage Door Live, please help us grow by letting your friends and followers know. If you're watching on Facebook, hit that follow button and give us a like. Take a moment to share this live feed with your friends and followers right now. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel and click that bell to keep updated on our new and exclusive YouTube content. Your support helps us continue these important conversations about Irish theatre, now and into the future.
Before we move on to the rest of our opportunities, we'd like to mention a special fundraiser event that is live right now raising money for Áras Éine on Inisheer. Founded in 2000, Áras Éine has hosted national and international visual and conceptual artists, musicians, performers, actors and a range of festivals and workshops. They also run an Artist in Residence program that offers a self-contained studio and apartment on site. Applications for the Arts and Disability Connect Award through Arts and Disability Ireland will close on the 24th May. Apply at adiarts.ie. In case you missed our Irish Theatre This Week show on Monday, the Arts Council Artist Award ends this Friday, while the Arts grant funding for both organizations and individuals closes on the 27th of May. The Creative Productions Supports closes on the 3rd of June. The International Literature Festival of Dublin begins tomorrow. You can choose from 75 digital events, including masterclasses, draw-alongs, and screenings. The program has both English and Irish language programming and events suitable for children. The Dublin Dance Festival has officially launched today. This year, you can buy tickets for screenings and view them from anywhere. The festival will be running for 2 weeks and will include Demos, a collection of films about separation and togetherness by Liz Roche Company and Crash Ensemble. Luminous Void, 20 Years of Experimental Film Society, is open at Project Arts Centre, running from the 13th May to 25th of June, Tuesday through Saturday from 12 to 5 p.m. To book your free slot and check availability, Project Arts Centre advises everyone to call into their box office for more information. As always, we want to hear from you. What news items did we miss? What do you want to hear more about? Send us your press releases and suggestions to news@TheatreMaker.ie or send us a message on social media. Join us again in 2 weeks for another episode of Stage Door Live. And in the meantime, check out our writing on TheatreMaker.ie. I'm Sue, and I will also be back with you Monday presenting Irish Theatre This Week.
A big thank you to everyone who has supported us from the beginning and each step along the way. If you like what we're doing and want to show us some love, there's plenty of ways to do so. Become a patron of TheatreMaker on Patreon or check out our store. Filled with Oscuelga products, all proceeds from these sales go directly into the work we're doing, so please consider supporting us. We're posting a link in chat now and it will also be in the description after the show. Thank you so much, Sue, for the news. I'm very excited now to introduce you all to our first ever Hot Topics. Every week, we will invite 2 guests to join me in picking through the latest breaking news topics, the good, the bad, and the downright grisly. Don't forget, as we trawl through the headlines, we want to hear from you watching at home, so please be sure to pop your thoughts in the comments down below. Before we get to those headlines, allow me to introduce our first 2 guests, Peter Power and Romy Kiranis. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, fantastic. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Good, yeah. Joining you live from Cork in sort of a strange delay.
Not to worry. I think we've discovered in this show that Ireland's internet is not created equally all through the country. And
No.
great to hear that you're in Cork. It's my spiritual home. I lived there for a few years, went to college. It's the best city in Ireland. Sorry, Dublin. Romy, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
All
it's such
great
a...
here in Monaghan.
Oh, Monaghan, another beautiful part of the country. Fantastic. One of my favourite places up there. Castle Blaney is a beautiful part of Monaghan that I happen to bizarrely know. So welcome to the show. Romy, can I ask before I continue, how do you pronounce your surname? I want to make sure that I'm getting it right.
You did get it right the first time around, but you did get it wrong the second, so it's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Cruañas.
Cruañas, there
No
we go. I'll never get it wrong again. So guys, on to our first topic. The reopening of theatres in the UK and the US. The grand reopening of both Broadway and the West End is in full flight at the moment, and with news coming in almost daily of which shows will be lifting the curtain in the coming months, UK theatres officially reopened on Monday, but with a reduced capacity of 50%, and I believe that most are holding out until the 21st of June, when they will be allowed to host full houses. Broadway is set for September, with Hamilton, Wicked and Aladdin among the first shows to open. What do you guys think about this, especially in the UK, apparent seemingly very speedy reopening of theatres? Peter, I'll come to you first.
It's brilliant news, It's been an extremely turbulent time for people. And I suppose there's been a lot of mixed messaging. So I think it's been difficult for people to really create any sense of forward momentum or planning. So I suppose they are our neighbours, and it's great to see them plough forward. I would imagine there's a little bit of distrust from our part as well, just judging at how they've kind of dealt with this entire situation very differently to us. And I think the level of cavalierness might be less so here. So my guess is we won't be opening at the same speed as them. I think we'll be more in line with European standards in that way. But I do think it's good news regardless. I think it means in some way we're getting back to normal, so.
Yeah, it definitely makes one feel a lot more positive. Romy, what about you? Do you have thoughts on this?
Well, I guess my thought is that a lot of theatre in Ireland has been socially distant for a very long time, if you think of the bumps and seats. And I guess this is a good time as any to talk about how we're going to tackle those issues maybe before opening or while we're thinking of opening. And I think that there is something that we keep mentioning as in like back to normal and thing, and this need of like the normal was never really normal. And for a lot of us in the kind of underbelly of the underbelly where I'm from, it feels like, our spaces are not going to open again. Our spaces are now hotels. Our spaces have been destroyed. Spaces where we were meeting up, creating theater, music, rehearsing. So we can't really be too happy. I guess I speak for myself about Broadway opening or not. It's like, okay.
Quite, and actually kind of touching on that, I know that particularly in the UK, there's a lot of anger at the moment because there seems to be this huge focus on prioritising the West End. Indeed, Andrew Lloyd Webber announced that he's shutting the Other Palace, which was a venue, a much smaller venue that was there, you know, to kind of encourage and nourish and create new musical theatre. And now that's gone. And I suppose there is a concern that those smaller theatres and those smaller spaces where so many of us cut our teeth are going to be gone. Peter, what do you think about Andrew Lloyd Webber, you know, things like that, focusing on the big West End shows?
I mean, what's happening with the pandemic, or what's happened with it, is it's exposed a load of infrastructural insecurity across the board, you know. So a lot of these are just problems that have existed for a very long time that have now come to a sort of an end point, which is that there's a very tenuous relationship between commercially scaled work and the kind of infrastructure that supplies it, which is amateur work or professional work on smaller scales, or underground work, the majority of the work most of us make, in fact. So it is it's in many ways what's happening is they're trying to build from the top down, which, you know, obviously is not going to work. I do understand the logic that they need to start getting essentially finance flowing again in some way. So, I mean, but I'm also not necessarily a pro-capitalist in that way. So I'm not necessarily sure I want to return to the way we were. But I get why they think it is a good idea. However, I have extreme questions around what they're planning to do with the kind of decisions, and the fact that I do get the feeling that they think that if they fling the doors open, get the big shows going, get the ticket sales pumping, suddenly the arts infrastructure ecosystem will come back on alive. And I think, as Romy said, I think there's too many things that are damaged now. I think we're kind of into a crisis point that's well beyond putting, you know, Les Mis back on stage. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even with them reopening the bigger shows, he also announced that they're cutting the orchestra of the Phantom and Opera in half, again, to huge rows and concern among everybody. I think there's something in that, absolutely. Another aspect of the reopening, just moving our attention to Broadway, and I know, Romy, you did say that, yeah, whatever, and I totally hear you on that because I feel a little bit the same myself. But I know that one of the things that they're doing in Broadway that they're hugely prioritising is around the very lightning quick vaccinating of casts and crew and testing daily. Like, do you think that's something that we might see here, or that we should see here?
Well, what I think that Ireland needs to look at other places as well as Broadway, and I'm sorry to go back on that, but you're asking my opinion, so I'm going to give it to you.
It's what you're here for.
There is this, thank you very much. There is this Anglo-centric sort of look, as in whatever come from a English-speaking country will have a different focus, and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to listen to it, but I like to remind, you know, the kind of post-colonial issues when it comes to Ireland, and the fact that there is, you know, the global South dealing with post-colonial theatre and how it works for many years, and maybe we don't look at other places and how they work. But I'm sure Broadway is gonna stay up, even if I don't have any particular thoughts on it. So.
No, I think good on you for reminding us all of that very valid point. I think it would be fair to say most Irish people understand what you're saying there and would probably agree with you. Just finally, before we move on to the next topic, Peter, do you think our audience is going to go? Will they feel comfortable? What do you think when we do reopen here?
I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I think ultimately we have kind of gone through a trauma together, and I think we are certainly, our relationship to one another is much more cautious. I certainly know for myself, the way I watch my interactions with humans has changed fundamentally, and I don't think vaccinations or that are really going to get rid of that as quickly as I think people think. So but at the same time, I don't feel like doom scrolling through the idea that audiences will never return. I think there's a need for community and gathering, and I think that people will want to do that, but I think not on the terms that we did them before, or certainly not without translating some of the concerns early on and kind of building them into a new infrastructure of sharing and telling and sort of experience. So I think I do think audiences want to come back, but they're not going to come back in the way that they did before. It's not like we can just forget that this happened. So yeah, my feeling is people want to see things for sure, but on the terms in which that occurs are kind of uncharted territory right now. And I think we just need to remain sensitive to the level of caution that's going to be in the air, you know.
Absolutely, fair point. I think we are all craving that shared experience, and we are talking a lot about going back to normal, but I'm inclined to agree with you that normal isn't going to be the same normal. It couldn't possibly be. Thank you both for those excellent thoughts. Moving on to our next topic, the unrestricted opening of outdoor dining. As we heard earlier this week, the Taoiseach Leo Varadkar has stated that he is increasingly confident that restaurants will be able to reopen their outdoor dining on the 7th of June. I believe we have a clip. Let's have a look at what he had to say.
Going to be seated only, you know, a metre or a metre and a half between tables, no more than 6 at a table. They can come from any number of households. There'll be no rule of 15. If you have the space, you have the space. There won't be a requirement to buy a substantial meal. That'll be gone, and we don't anticipate that there'll be a limit on the amount of time that you can stay. So it'll be a lot more practical than what existed before, but that's not finalised yet.
So, Romy, I'm going to come to you first. How do you feel about that?
About outdoor dining.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a good connection to make between the possibility to eat outside and maybe the possibility of bringing more art outside as well, and definitely more theater. I'm thinking how, you know, even what Peter was just saying, that we need to kind of reevaluate how are we going to connect with people. So definitely food has always been an amazing cultural symbol as well of unity and trying new things and being together. Now, the reason why eating outside, it's okay, but then when it comes to maybe, you know, busking or other type of art that can also make the experience, because if I'm going outside, I'm going to walk to Grafton Street if I'm in Dublin, and if there's not at least 2 or 3 buskers, why am I even in town for? You know what I mean? Like, I would go somewhere else. So I'm not sure how it's going to work in that way. You know, we are used to have the cities enveloped by a lot of other types of art, as well as, you know, filling our bellies. And I think there is, you know, bread for the soul as well that needs to be explored.
Absolutely. I mean, it's certainly hard to think about the fact that unrestricted, essentially, I'm aware, you know, with a bit of social distancing, but from any number of households, and no as if you've got the space, you've got the space. And yet we still don't have any clear date for trial, even outdoor events. Peter, what are your thoughts on this?
There's a really big question around infrastructure, I think, and how Ireland has built its entire cultural infrastructure around avoiding being outside. So, or at least to a very large degree. And I think we're moving into an era now where we're going to have to, I mean, there's a lot of politics in this, in the way city councils sort of operate, control and exert force and control over streets. There's a lack of infrastructure in terms of like casual elements. So like most of the infrastructure in cities is swallowed up in exchanges of money. So there's nowhere really to sit. There's nowhere really to be that's not in some way involved in a transaction, a financial transaction. There's some parks that are sort of remained relatively free of that. But I think what's happening now is businesses are going to have to start to stake a claim on street infrastructure. And that in one way is very exciting, but in another way, it's a very fraught area of infrastructure in the way Ireland operates. So we have a lot of conversations to have around access, around what that means for cities' kind of design. I think like there's a lot to say there. I think city councils are going to have to start to pay a little bit more attention to the way in which they allow the flow of infrastructure and people in cities, which is incredibly poorly designed in Ireland. So I think, although it's brilliant and I'm really delighted and I am very excited to go outside and be around people, I think we are now moving into it. When something changes this fundamentally, it's in these moments that we have to exert the most pressure on the way in which these things happen. I think now is the time to start voicing what we want rather than allowing these things just be built around dining. You know, I think there's a lot to echo what Romy said. I think there is that element of like, what else is going on when this is happening, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Romy, I just want to come back to you there for a moment, because, you know, you were talking about, you know, buskers on the streets, and certainly, you know, do you think there's a sense, because I know I'm definitely feeling it a little bit, that it's a little bit unfair that this is going ahead on June 7th, which is not far away at all, and yet for us to try even small outdoor events, we're not allowed currently. What do you think about that? Do you have anything further to add on that?
I guess I believe that nobody has ever given any artist anything totally for free. And what is happening from my perspective, from the way I look at things, is that a promise of a future better funding system will keep people quiet and nice and at peace and just like trying to keep going. Now, what I also would like to say is that in the last year, a lot of Zooms that we're making with artists and schools and things, and we kept training and we kept meeting, and you can see how the faces are getting darker, the eye, the bags, the thing. We live on connection, breathing together, touching each other's hands, and I don't know, like it's basically like I feel like we're all a succulent sort of plants trying to survive this time. But we say without too much water we'll be fine. Up to a point. Succulents also can dry up, you know. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question with this.
No, it's great. That's what this is, opinion. But like, it hasn't all been doom and gloom, which is bringing us to our next topic. As I said, Minister Martin has stated that she would like to see some live music test events as early as June, while no clear plan for theatres has been made yet. Where do we start with that? Peter, I'm going to come to you. Test music events, your thoughts?
I mean, we have to try something, you know, and I mean, we have to like, I mean, at a certain point, we're going to have to accept a couple of very simple truths. The vaccine is going to help. It's not going to get rid of COVID. COVID's here forever. Where people are going to die from it every year. And it's not going to be as bad as it was. It's going to be much, much better. It's going to enter the like disease stream very much like not like the flu, very different disease, not making a comparison, but like that. And we're going to have to live again. So we have to try these things out. So it's great to hear that we can go for these kind of test events. There's a certain sort of element of fear and design that are going to coalesce. I worry about the sort of weaponization of design in that way, in that we're going to sort of like be forced into a year or 2 year long sort of anxiety derived experience structure that, you know, if we do an event where everyone's 2 feet apart and it works, maybe we'll just keep doing those for a year. I think for me, we need to keep testing the boundary of that every single time we do an event, because we need to know where the ley lines are, where the sort of boundaries are. So I'm excited to hear her say that. I'm also conscious of the fact that it's an impossible task for the government. It's an impossible task for the arts councils. It's an impossible task for the artists. There is no right way to do this. There is no roadmap. Everyone is trying their own thing. You know, Germany had its own attitude 4 or 5 months ago. That went absolutely to pot. You know, every country has tried its own version of things and has gotten it wrong, because this is new territory. So I think we have to support. The major question I have, and is one that I think I'll leave to someone with much more experience, like possibly Peter Jordan, is what about insurance? Like, where does this all lie really in the long run? It's like, it's great to test these things, but who's picking up the pieces if they go wrong? That's what I'd like to know.
Absolutely, and actually that is something that we will be discussing later on with Pete. Absolutely. So Minister Martin is on our side. There's that kind of feeling in lots of ways. But Romy, I'm going to come to you. Do you think our Minister for Arts could be doing more for us and this sector?
I actually am going to surprise you right now. we can do more for our sector. I feel like, again, like Peter was saying, we're expecting from the top down to like, hello, we're here. We need to, I always do this gesture, put your sleeves up and do something, like you think it's easy for me to speak right here, right now, say all these things. We try to do them because we try to create some sort of like momentum, to create an awakening of sorts that needs to happen, that I don't think will ever come from the top. I don't think any minister or any politician will ever wake up being unable to sleep at night because of what's happening to the artists. Are the artists the ones that are unable to sleep at night? They are in the Zooms with 25 blankets because they can pay the heat. They don't have houses. They have to move away from the country. All of this is happening. And we're like, what do you think? The minister, I think she's warm at home and she does her best.
Romy, can I just say I absolutely adore your attitude. Yes, rolling up the sleeves and getting on with it. I love that. On that note, let's turn our attention to some people who are very much rolling up their sleeves and getting on with it. Praxis. So Praxis, the Artists' Union of Ireland, has secured a meeting with the Arts Council on the 24th of May. They have been conducting a survey among artists around funding and procedures. The deadline is tomorrow, so do make sure your voice is heard. Check their website for more information. It's great that they've got a seat at the table with the Arts Council. What do you guys think about Praxis and what they're up to? Peter, I'm going to come to you.
I have to caveat this by saying that I haven't fully engaged with the manifesto. I am aware of members and I am aware of the general energy of Praxis. Praxis I was part of a group called the Irish Society for Stage and Screen Designers about 3 or 4 years ago, and was part of that up until recently when due to our constitution, you can only stay on the board so long. I would love to have stayed on, but and the group action at that time brought about a lot of change. We were the first organisation to basically kind of have that first conversation with the Abbey that then turned into that very famous letter in the Times. So there was a lot of, I do believe in group action. I hugely do. I think that's a cultural necessity and something we're remembering. I think there's no irony, or there is a grand irony in the fact that we're remembering the value of group action at a time where we were forced to stay away from each other. So I think that very much has brought about this sense of unionization. My only question was, I know very much from our perspective when we started, it's very difficult to start a union. There's a lot of rules around how that operates, and a very, very strict legal sort of binds that works it. So as far as I know, I think Praxis is planning to join a union. So I don't actually think it as it stands. So I think it's going through, I think it's planning to join you. I could be wrong, and please correct me, but I think that's where they're at. So I'd like to see where they go, what union they join with, and what addendums they bring with them, what kind of motivations they bring into that union. The Union of Ireland that we have really needs to be reinvigorated. It has really fallen by the wayside. You've seen some amazing action in the screen recently with the Screen Union, or the Actors Union, I think. That was absolutely fantastic what's happened there. So I'm excited to see it. All group action is always welcomed. But I'd say they have quite a lot of hurdles ahead of them around the legality of how to become a union, the type of union they join, and the very, very sad part of how politics works on that level, and unionization, which is you can bring an agenda to the table and it will get diluted by the organization that you have to join. That's just the nature of compromise. So I'm waiting to see what happens next with them, for sure.
Certainly, I think we're all going to be watching very closely what happens with Praxis. So watch this space. Finally, to finish on a good news story, last week the Mermaid Arts Centre announced the 4 artists selected for their incredible initiative Transform. This scheme is a bit of a game changer in that these 4 artists are actually being employed on a part-time basis at Mermaid for 1 year, not on a project or a commission, but rather to proceed with their work in a self-directed manner. Guaranteed financial security for a whole year. So what do we think about this scheme? Romy, I'm going to come to you.
Well, it's a great step and it's lovely. It's very different what they're trying to do and the approach, for sure. Now, I will never say that's enough, that's great, everybody copy this. Oh, can you hear me?
I can, yeah, go
You know
ahead.
what I mean? Like, it's a great step.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great step, and there is much more than can be done in different ways. Now, 1 year part-time, yeah, that will not get you a mortgage, that will not get you your kids into a school, and a lot of other scenarios that will not get you maybe a stamp or other things. Like when what we are thinking of when we're thinking of artists is one type of person, as in like middle class with a certain type of background and a certain type of help around them. This is fantastic. When we think about artists as human beings that need more than a part-time job to have fun for 1 year, then this is a great step, but needs more.
Again, Romy, I absolutely love your attitude. I'm afraid that is all we have time for in this section. Thank you so much, Peter and Romy, and joining for me in that. That was a great dive into the headlines. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Romy and Peter will be back with us later in the show for our final segment, so do be sure to stay tuned. If you haven't checked out our website recently, you are missing out. You can catch up on our blog posts, our latest articles and TheatreMaker news at TheatreMaker.ie. Before we move on to our news section, have a look at some highlights and lowlights from Stage Door Live.
Hello everyone, welcome to Stage Door Live, a new webcast from TheatreMaker.ie. Thank you so much for joining us for our first ever show. Welcome everyone. Before I start with our planned show, there is something important I have to say. So, a week and a half ago, George Floyd, a Black American man, was murdered by police in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Hopefully you all know this by now, but it needs to be said. Protests and marches are taking place in America, here in Ireland, and across the world, demanding change, asking for recognition, and asking for an end to the systematic racism and oppression of Black people. Hello to you both.
And thanks, squeezy little goat.
It might be a bit confusing because I don't think that my audio is going to catch up. So maybe try and not look at my face and just listen.
I really focused in on performance art there. And then I did a specialist master's with an artist called Marina Abramovich and on and on and on. I have a doctorate, which I laugh when I say that. I have a doctorate in performance art. I give prescriptions for long durational performances, 8 hours minimum.
The EPIC group has been formed in response to this crisis, and as such then but our aims are aligned. So like primary aim, and the one that's really, really at the heart of our game, is the continuation of the COVID-19 payment and the wage subsidy allowance until the mass gathering and caps are lifted, and until the restrictions on the amount of people you can have indoors and outdoors are lifted through social distancing.
And their intimate soundscape, 1,000 miniature meadows, can be experienced whether you're in Dublin or Donegal, in lockdown or out. Welcome to the show, Luke and Shanna. It is brilliant to have you with us.
Hello. Hello. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, I love that energy. I can tell this is going to be a great chat. Okay.
You know, there is a time and a place for what I would describe as high art. But at the end of the day, particularly now, audiences are key. In other words, income is key. And again, going back to amateur musical theatre, which is where I started, we used to always complain every year when we gather in the hall to hear what show the committee had chosen. And when they mentioned Oklahoma, we all went, Jesus, can we not do something modern? And we used to always say, why do you keep picking Oklahoma and Greece? And they're saying because they fill the hall, because they fill the theatre. And because if we don't fill the theatre, we're not doing a play later on in the year.
Welcome to the show, Grace and Lisa. It is brilliant to have you both on with us this evening. Grace, first of all, what led you to decide to study overwork in Irish theatre for your dissertation?
First off, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my camera, but we'll just keep going. I was inspired to research it because I was frequently surrounded by people talking about the excessive hours that they had worked, and then actually seeing it happen, seeing people work long hour days, not having days off, working through their lunch breaks, and eventually noticing the cracks appearing in those people. And so I just thought that would be a really interesting area to look at, and nobody else had looked at it before.
Right, and you were probably not surprised, but to discover what your findings were. Grace, can you talk just a little bit about what you discovered?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. You're right. You're righted again now. But yeah. Tell me about what you found, Grace.
Well, I discovered that there's absolutely an issue with overwork. There's no doubt about it.
Last week, our last word was about numbers, and well, so is this week in a way. Over the last 24 weeks, we have brought together over 130 guests to discuss creativity, process, work, and the issues that exist within our sector. We have covered the ever-changing news of the week and debated the most pressing of those issues. Over 60,000 people have viewed our content on its various platforms, and we've created over 50 hours of video content. 23 episodes, 22 artists in isolation, 18 final poetic thoughts, 13 special feature interviews, 10 special reports, 70 plus live guests, 53 plus featured artists and makers, and 130 plus guests being given the platform to share their stories on our show. As we entered a very strange period in the history of the world, we knew that we had to find a way to bring people together to talk about our past, our present, and make our future better.
Now I am delighted to welcome Liz Roach to the show. The Liz Roach Company have just kicked off Dublin Dance Festival 2021 in brilliant style last night with their latest show, Demos. Commissioned by Dublin Dance Festival and the Abbey Theatre, this work is a suite of interconnected shorts. Demos, Films of Separation and Togetherness, is part of a new collaboration between choreographer Liz Roach and composer David Coonan. I'm delighted to have Liz with us in studio now to tell us all about it. Welcome, Liz. How's it going?
Great. Delighted to be here.
Good. Oh, great. First of all, before we get to any proper questions, congratulations. I watched the show last night. It was absolutely breathtaking and beautiful.
Oh,
really well done.
Thank you very much.
So, first of all, get to the nitty-gritty now. Can you tell us about the development of the piece? It started out as a live performance and now it has become this incredible work on film that you're presenting now. Can you tell us about that process?
Yeah, well, the collaboration between myself and David began, I suppose, in late 2018. And then we made work in development for the Dublin Dance Festival in 2019. So there's been work on the piece and the score for a long time. And the plan was that we would fully realise it this year, in the Abbey for Dublin Dance Festival. But of course, COVID has changed that. So I suppose we just had a moment where we had to make a decision. How could we still go ahead with the piece? What could we do? So we just began to reimagine it for film. And sort of also in a way that the piece isn't fully finished yet, like we're in the middle of making it as such. So in a way it was like this was a step towards a live production. And we just had to, I suppose, re-look at the work, find different ways, reimagine it for camera. I'm working with Jose Miguel Jimenez on the film, and we had to find a way of how could we portray sort of scenes from the piece, and how also we could give them their own little world and their own, I suppose, their own world to live in. And I suppose the Abbey, very generously, in we went. We made the films in there, and in a sense we made it from the point of view of a stage production, but of course we had that added intimacy when you know, with the camera can just be so close in a way. So we sort of had the best of both worlds.
And as you kind of moved into that process of bringing Jose in, I mean, you'd already been collaborating with David with the music. Did that kind of, once that extra layer came in and you're working specifically for that medium, can you talk about that process? How did that change the process and the development of the piece, if at all?
Well, in a way, we started, I'm not sure it changed that much, really, because we were working towards, we still are working towards this final stage production. So when, like, David's score was set, there are certain parts of the piece that hadn't, you know, there's two sections of the piece that are improvised musically and with the dancers. So there is that sense of liveness that we were trying to, you know, will still be part of the live show, and we wanted that to be part of the films. And then I suppose it was just really bringing the team around, like with Katie Davenport and with Sinead McKenna, and also Shane O'Reilly with the dramaturgy, and Jose also with projection. So there was just this sense of everybody gathering together, moving towards a show, but knowing that we had to keep that perspective of the film in our minds.
Lovely. I think this is an excellent point to have a quick look at a clip from the piece. Let's have a quick look.
Okay.
From the film there in that clip. Beautiful. So of course the overall theme of the piece is separation and togetherness, and on screen we have all of these incredible artists, the dancers, the musicians, moving and playing together in one space, but also having this weird invisible barrier between them. Can you talk a little bit about the process of actually filming the piece and how that was for you in light of that?
Yes, I suppose we had to make a decision. You know, if we were going to go, and if we were going to be working at the moment, we had to, like, I had to accept the lack of contact that was available. So once I got over that, it actually, the restriction in a way is creative and interesting. So we had to use it. We just had to be very careful. We had to still, you know, the dancers are really amazing. So it's like when they understand, you know, when we talk about how it's going to be, like, you know, early on in rehearsal, they were like, how are we going to do this? So I had kind of a plan. I had a few things, you know, I had it worked out how we would manage. And I suppose there was just that sense of, we had to just be really organized going into it, really just have ourselves together. Also, like, two of the dancers are a couple. So we had an option that they could touch, which was kind of amazing to have that. So yeah, like it was just having to be organized going in, and also having to look for, I suppose, having to look for something else than we normally look for. You know, like with dance, we look for intimacy, we look for contact, we look for kind of maybe sort of more immediate energy, and we just could only do that sometimes with this, and we had to find different ways to do it. But that ends up being something too. So.
It certainly does. I was just going to say, by making a virtue of that separation in the piece, certainly there were moments where, for me, so that negative space, if you like, between the actors. There's one moment in particular that I'm thinking of in the first piece where it's as if they're going to lift the dancer, but they stop short. And that space, that negative space, was so charged and palpable and really beautiful. So I certainly think you succeeded on that note. And it just goes to show how sometimes, you know, these challenges can actually bring about something unexpected and brilliant. On that, you mentioned there a moment ago that two of the dancers are a couple and were allowed to touch. And that brings me to my next question, which is around each of the 6 films has its own title, and one of them was called Hand in Hand, and which is that specific piece, and the title comes up before the dance happens. And for me watching, the minute Hand in Hand came up, I had a really visceral reaction to it, going, oh, are they going to be touching hands? You know, and then, I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful piece. But I just wanted to ask about those titles and how did they come about, which came first, the dance or the title or a bit of both? Can you tell us about that?
Well, I suppose when I was trying to imagine the piece last November, you know, kind of planning, I was trying to do a lot of work about like what sort of words would be really useful in rehearsal for the dancers. You know, how could they respond? Because a lot of the work is made on improvisation, and that's kind of crafted after the initial kind of response to the word or the task or the idea. So I sort of ended up coming up with a set of words. Now, they didn't all end up in the final film, but certain things like earthquake and traveling back, they were all there from the very beginning. That duet was called something else for a long time, but now it's Hand in Hand. But I suppose we wanted to have this sense of nothing too prescriptive, but like a kind of a container. So there was some context to see the piece in, and also maybe a kind of a prompt or a hint or something, just, you know, because I know people can find this kind of work very abstract, and I don't really delve a lot too much into narrative. So I feel like it just sort of sets a space for the work to be seen in. But yeah, for us, like, it was really important to keep those words and also to keep the film kind of episodic, like just looking at one thing at a time and one idea at a time.
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you, narrative or not, the emotions and the atmosphere was absolutely palpable throughout all of them. So job well done. I'm going to touch now on the incredible design. You mentioned earlier Katie Davenport and Sinead McKenna and Jose Miguel Jimenez. Yeah. It was, I mean, it's beautiful. It's the design, the set pieces that moved in those moving walls. I mean, it was so, well, for me watching, so evocative of the constantly changing goalposts that we've been living with for the last year and the constant shifting and moving. But can you talk about that collaboration and how that was for the piece?
Well, I think when myself and Katie first started talking, there was a sense of wanting to make a space where it felt like people had lived. Like, and maybe they're not, almost slightly abandoned space, but somehow represent some kind of space, that had been, like, many lives had passed through whatever space this was. So she showed me loads of images of kind of sort of broken down buildings and, you know, seeing old wallpaper on walls. And then also, at the same time, she was really drawn to these really kind of clean, perfect contemporary spaces. So there ended up just being this mixture of the two. And I suppose like walls in that way, and even slightly aged, are just really evocative. It's like you feel like all the stories there, everything that they've seen, and very simply just the kind of moving them around, repositioning them, as you say, it kind of throws up all these possibilities. Yeah, no, it's really, but yeah, and also I think like with Sinead, with the lighting, there was that sense of someone's not in a way kind of wanting to see the workings of the stage, you know. So I feel like the lights are really present and they're there. And in one of the pieces, the dancers are moving the lights and moving the projection and moving the walls. So there was this sense of just wanting to somehow bring everything to life, or this feeling as if you could be inside or touching them, but also, also I suppose this sense of, I suppose, yeah, just being really aware of everything that's happening on stage was really important to us.
Yeah.
And then we, Crash Ensemble last November recorded most of the score. So Jose had taken some recordings of them at that time, and so we were trying to find ways also, because we couldn't have the full ensemble there. It was, we just had Kate and Alex and Brian live with us. So we were just trying to find ways also to have a sense of ensemble, just, I suppose, a sense of togetherness in that.
Absolutely. It's certainly a visual treat for the senses, I would say. And there's one moment in particular where one of the dancers, I don't want to spoil it, but does something. And I, honest to God, I so related to that moment. And he kind of leaves the space.
Oh, yeah.
And just touching on that, what you were saying about kind of owning the space and being in the Abbey Theatre. And it just, you know, there's a part of me that likes to imagine that there's all of these ghosts of actors and dancers and everything in the Abbey Theatre, even though it's closed right now. And it's, you know, just a really, really lovely way to use the space. Looking ahead now to the future, I know that there are plans to stage a live performance in November. Have you any thoughts yet on how the piece is going to evolve from the filmed piece to the live piece?
Well, we're beginning to talk about it now. Like we did a huge amount of work in the Abbey. In making the films, we were doing a huge amount of work on what the piece might be. So every time we were looking at the monitors, we were talking about, oh, so in the live show, you know, we'll you know, this will work this way or it won't work that way. So I think we learnt a lot from that process. And I think still, like, there's something of the episodic nature of the films that I'm excited to keep, you know, like not to try and all of a sudden string it together, but sort of trust that, you know, one after the other, there's a strength in that. And also, I suppose the thing that I find really interesting is, like, when we were in rehearsal and the musicians came in, of course, we couldn't rehearse much together at all, like maybe once or twice, really. But it was really amazing to watch the change between the dancers in relation to the music and then when the musicians were live. And I suppose I really thought, like, I'm really looking forward to that, because everything in their bodies changes and everything in the musicians' bodies changes. And I was like, oh, this is why it needs to be live. Like, this is why it's important that we do this. Because I remember actually, like, being a bit overwhelmed when I saw how everybody changed when they actually just went into one of the sections together for the first time. So I think, I think also in a way for the live performance, those things are enough. I think they'll be enough, because I think we might have forgotten how amazing those simple little things are. And I just think it's great to just remember how amazing they are.
For sure. And kind of on a related note, what do you feel are maybe the gems in how you've changed your process in this last year that you would like to keep moving forward?
Well, like, it's been a strange year, but in a way we've worked a lot, and we just sort of kept going and didn't realize it would be as difficult as it would be, and postponed things, and then when the time came, found ways of moving them onto film. And I suppose one of the things is we had an opportunity to commission a group of dancers that work for the company to do a blog on their experience of lockdown. And, you know, and these were, with this group of dancers, we were meant to be working so much throughout the year together, and then all of a sudden we couldn't. And that was really special in a way, because just to get their perspective, you know, I think a lot of the time you hear about what the choreographer thinks or what the designers think, and you don't often get to hear about what's going on for the dancers. So I feel like we're also at the moment kind of working on an archive project for the company, and that's also made me go to the dancers about that. And I suppose I'm really interested in their perspective going forward as well. So I think that's something to keep. And I also think that I've certainly found filming like challenging but really interesting, and I feel like with over all the film projects that we've done, I'm excited by it as well. So I would, yeah, I'd be happy to keep this level of engagement with film, maybe not this level of engagement with film, but you know, a certain level of engagement with film going forward. Yeah.
And it's so lovely to hear of positives that have come out of this strange, weird time. Now, of course, Demos is only one thing that's on as part of the Dublin Dance Festival. Do you have anything in particular in the programme that you're looking forward to seeing, aside from your own work?
Yeah, well, as an audience member, I'm really looking forward to the Crystal Pite and Kid Pivot piece, and also Justine Doswell's film with Luca Truffarelli. I'm really looking forward to that. I hear that's beautiful. And then also to shamelessly plug my own work, but Liz Roach Company and the Irish World Academy of Music and Dance in UL and the Dublin Dance Festival, we run a symposium together, and it's called Modes of Capture Symposium. So that's running from Friday to Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of this week. And it's kind of academic presentations, but also workshops and performances. And our associate artist, Lucia Kickham, is going to be performing a live stream. So we're all terrified, but it's going to be great from UL. So yeah, and like really wonderful workshop on Sunday morning with Charles Coronejo from New Zealand. And I just feel it'll be a really interesting time of gathering. We're kind of looking at the idea of decolonizing thinking around dance making and I suppose structures and embodiment. So yeah, it should be interesting.
Sounds so exciting. I'm sold. I don't know about anybody listening, but I'm sold. Demos Films of Separation and Togetherness is playing as part of Dublin Dance Festival until the 29th of May. Tickets are available now from dublindancefestival.ie. Please do check it out. You will not be disappointed. Thank you so much for coming in to chat with us today, Liz. It was an absolute delight.
Thanks for having me.
If you find value in Stage Door Live, please help us grow by letting your friends and followers know. If you're watching on Facebook, hit that follow button and give us a like. Take a moment to share this live feed with your friends and followers right now. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel and click that bell to keep updated on our new and exclusive YouTube content. Creating live content is a costly endeavour. If you'd like to help us keep the conversations going, please hop on over to our Patreon page, where you could become a patron and gain access to exclusive patron-only content. Patreon.com/TheatreMaker.ie. You can find us on most social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at TheatreMaker.ie. Catch additional news, blogs and sector coverage on our website, TheatreMaker.ie. Watch this space, there's more exciting content on the way from TheatreMaker.ie.
For our final segment of the evening, we would like to welcome you to The Big Debate. In this segment, we will be inviting our guests to discuss, deliberate and debate on the bigger issues, questions and possibly even a few controversies that are currently on the teacups. I would like to welcome to the panel event safety expert Peter Jordan. Pete, how are you? How's it going? Oh, I can't hear Pete there. Can we get a quick check on that? Are you muted there, Pete? One second while we sort you out. I'll just welcome back to the show ROMI CRUAñas and Peter Power from earlier. And of course, Peter Power is with us as well. Hopefully we'll get his mic issues sorted out very soon. We have two motions to debate for your viewing pleasure this evening. And please, for everyone at home, please do remember to add your 2 cents in the comments below. We want to hear your views and opinions too, so don't be shy. First up for discussion, is mitigating risk and embracing contingency, something that we're all talking about and discussing at the moment. Pete, do we have you? Can I hear you? Are you with us?
Oh, no.
Not yet, so I'm going to move swiftly on. I'll come back to you. Hold that thought. I know it's a good one. I'm going to start with you, so Peter Power, if that's okay. In your opinion, what do you think are the biggest risks facing planners at this moment in time? You mentioned earlier insurance. Can I pull on that thread?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm one of those, I'm very lucky to have a sort of a team around me, in some ways, a small team, who kind of help me with this, producers of great skill and import. So I think insurance has been an ongoing problem in Ireland. I think this is something that, actually, I think probably felt more by, from what I gather, more by circus performers or by aerialists. That's kind of spread from there into outdoor events, and then it started to now sort of bleed into large scale events. I think the insurance issue is because Ireland is such a litigious place. So we have a fairly serious uphill struggle, one that the government really hasn't dealt with, and has kind of left it to individuals or companies, etc., to kind of manage themselves. So on a very grand scale, I guess we just haven't seen what the litigious impact is of a potential COVID illness related to an event, and what is going to happen in an Ireland that is already very prone to suing. So it's a very trepidatious time. It's going to cause a lot of, I think, extreme hand-wringing and an extreme amount of preparation for companies. And it's going to cause a lot of taxation, physically, emotionally, spiritually, energy-wise, financially, things that I think we're really going to need support with. And I think it could become a crisis very quickly if we don't acknowledge it.
Absolutely. Do you think there is a risk? This is something that I've been thinking about a lot. And I wonder, do you think that there is a risk of like premiums going up? Are we seeing that already? Do you think, Peter?
I mean, again, I want to be careful when I say that this is certainly I'm not my area of expertise, but I mean, I very much doubt the premiums are going to go down. I haven't really seen that happen yet. So, and I imagine not only are the premiums going to go up, but the cost of implementing safety measures is going to skyrocket. Mm-hmm. And I think even if the premiums were to maintain themselves, it's the implications of what the premiums demand that's going to really cause the financial lift. So it's not going to be enough for insurance companies to go, it's cool, we're going to just do the same exorbitant rate that we've always done. What we now need to realize is the scale of requirement and pressure put on organizations to protect themselves against a country that is by and large an extremely litigious place is going to cause an inflation in costs. And I think it's going to have to be a lot of things. It's going to have to be a decrease in premium and an increase in the sort of council's funding, understanding, predicate or kind of capacity to allow funding to pay for these things, such that it doesn't affect artistic quality, artistic presentation, fees, development time. These are places that are already strained. So I think it's not going to be enough for the kind of fingers in the ears approach of let's keep putting out the same, funding limits. Let's keep putting out the same bursary limits, et cetera, et cetera. The cost of making work is already higher than it used to be, and it's about to skyrocket again. And I think the conversation is kind of multifaceted in that way,
Yeah, certainly. I think it's absolutely something that we should all be highlighting a little more, for sure. Pete, do we have you yet? Do we have sound? No. Okay, I'm going to keep going in that case. Liz, I'm going to come to you for a moment. We mentioned earlier that Demos is being planned for a live event in November. What kind of contingencies, if any, are in play for you on that?
Well, I suppose we're just moving forward. Like, we're moving forward as if it's going to happen. How we've dealt with, pieces have had to be postponed and certain aspects of performances have had to be cancelled. And in a way, we've managed up until now, and we're just going to continue as we have managed. Like, we have incredible buy-in from the people that work with us. You know, they you know, we make sure like everybody really understands what's going on, and we like, it's just, I suppose, the commitment of the company, the dancers, the team, everybody knows how difficult it is to make work at the moment. So, and I suppose we rely on them being understanding, but also like we're committed, like we have to be committed to the environment being safe. We also have to understand that, you know, it takes much more time to make the work now. So that's something that has been complicated, but I suppose we've been learning it over the year, that we just, and of course there are financial implications there. But I suppose we just, we're just moving forward. And I don't want to say hoping, but we are just hoping it'll be okay. And there is a certain amount of, we've managed in the past when it hasn't worked out according to plan. So yeah.
That's such a great attitude. So positive, I love it. I think we have Pete now.
Yeah, I think
Excellent. Pete, so coming to you at long last, I'm only dying to hear what you have to say on this topic. So coming back to you now, or to you, we've mentioned insurance as a big risk and topic that we need to be looking at. What other risks are we looking at as we tentatively reopen?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, insurance. Insurance was a problem before we started all this, so I'm not sure where we're going to end up. I look at. I mean, I know you're talking. I was really interested in hearing everybody at start, and especially we look to the UK because we're kind of tied to them. I mean, UK are weeks ahead of us with regards to our vaccination program. We're on around 40%. They're 86%. I think when vaccination come on stream, it will significantly affect how we reopen up as an economy and as a country. And within saying that, I think we're tied to the UK, and as the UK open up, and even if they go to their level, I'm not sure if it's 1 or 4, but where they look to reduce their social distancing requirements, I think that's going to put massive pressure on us as a sector, especially when you look at the north. And we are completely combined with them as an industry. So once they go to that, I can't see any other way, but we'll have to follow suit, you know. So I think there's a lot of different variables, and I think a lot of it is actually, I think part of the contingency at the moment is being ready for change and being open and responsive, and I think that's how we get through it, you know. I mean, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And sticking with you for a moment, Pete, in coming up with these contingency plans, do you think that anybody in particular bears the responsibility for creating those contingencies? I mean, is it up to each individual company? Is it up to the venues, or dare I say it, the government?
It's up to everybody. It's like you could create contingency for critical assets. Sorry, it's a terrible word, but it's like if you've got something that you value, you create plans to keep that safe. Okay, and then if you're a company, or if you're a theatre, or if you're an organisation, or whatever it is, you have to look at what's most important to your line of business, and that's what you protect, and you create contingency plans around that. If it's about protecting your rehearsal room or your company or whatever, that's what you do, and that's how you build your contingency around.
Yeah,
and whoever kind of owns and manages that resource, let's say, it's on them to manage that accordingly.
Yeah, I suppose you're right, really. It is everybody that has to kind of work together on this. And I suppose the biggest fear, I think, for a lot of people, certainly when it comes to the bigger events, your festivals, what happens if everything is going ahead and this festival is going ahead and all this money has been spent up front on X, Y, and Z, and then suddenly the event doesn't happen because, I really don't want to say it, but if we're forced to stay at home again, what happens then to those people who have already spent that money? You know, they're going to be in a bad way yet again.
It is. I mean, I don't have an answer for that. You know, I mean, all I can say is that that's part of the conundrum we're in, and that's why people are risk averse about doing large work. You know, it makes a lot of sense if you think, and I think actually, to be fair, I think the biggest issue we have going forward is how we tour internationally. What's that relationship with international touring partners? How do we bring work into the country, and how do we bring our work out of the country, and that relationship with Culture Ireland? You know, so I think within, and that's, I mean, I know I've toured quite a lot in advance of the pandemic, and I think those are big issues to ask. And I was like, well, if we can't do that for the next 12 to 18 months, how does that affect the work? How does that affect the relationship with artists? And so there's a lot of big things still not needs to be see where that goes, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of neatly brings me to my final point around this discussion. I think it's necessary to touch on job creation or lack thereof. I mean, we all know how critical those first few years, especially for coming out of training, are for any maker. And now coming off the back of 2 years of extremely limited opportunities for graduating students across all disciplines, on stage and off, are we at risk of losing new voices, to the stable, pensionable job? Romy, what do you think about that?
Well, my experience working in theatre in Ireland for over 7 years, new voices have been ignored quite a bit way before COVID. So what happened to new voices? Where are the new voices? Who decides which voice is new and which voice isn't as well? Because obviously someone can have a wealth of knowledge, but maybe never left Ireland and they never become a voice. And then someone else goes somewhere else, maybe to the UK or to the US for some time, and then come back, and then this person is like, oh, now we're gonna listen to you, and then you're amazing. While at the same time, people, new voices, when you say new voices, I think about a lot of voices like mine, maybe with an accent, maybe with different languages, with different backgrounds, but even with different accessibilities, or even mothers that live the theatre for some time and then they need to come back. These gaps, these CV gaps, even the fact that as artists we have CV, I don't believe that an artist is ever not working in a way, or that's the way I think. You live your art through your daily life, and whatever you make, in a way, it's keeping your arts practice alive. But at the same time, when it comes to new voices, again, it's not just a COVID scenario. New voices are not heard much at all.
Absolutely. Like with everything else, we have found that in a lot of ways, the pandemic has only exacerbated certain issues. And I agree with you, Romy. I think new voices and different voices is definitely something that was, a challenging topic for many people. Before the pandemic, and now it's worse again. Peter, have you any thoughts on this subject? Peter Power.
In terms of the sort of the element of new voices coming in,
and job creation and lack of opportunities for the last 2 years.
I mean, it's. I have so many thoughts. I'm almost frozen by wanting to respond. I mean. Yes, I think we are moving into an era where we're going to have to confront a lot of the heritage of policy, particularly the post-recession destruction of company model, this sort of like ravenous, aggressive model that's been kind of around since, where it's very difficult to establish a company. The companies that tend to be established are under a massive duress to become almost educational bodies, on top of the fact that they make work. And the kind of infrastructure that was there to support and build a sort of community that would provide more job, if we want to call them job opportunities, more opportunities for work to happen on a sort of a protected level. What we're all living in now is a gig economy. And so, that's come from the fact that policy has destroyed much of the infrastructure that existed. Now, I'm not necessarily pro-infrastructure either. I mean, some of that infrastructure is part of the reason as to why these sort of divides exist in the first place. But I do think that there's a sort of I do believe in experience. And I do believe in experience being developed over time, which sometimes can lead to infrastructure. More so, you could maybe see it as centralized or decentralized. But ultimately, we've had 10 to 15 years where we've been kind of pitted against one another. And that sort of in many ways, most artists are working the same type of psychology as a Deliveroo driver. I mean, we have no security, no consistency of income, no consistency of career, no low to mid level sort of clear paths of increase in our job, no stability when we get to what's considered mid level. Most of the gatekeepers are still the ones that were there before. So and then this idea that even within that there's privileges, that the fact that I can even talk about that means I'm privileged in some way, and people haven't even got that chance to speak about that. I mean, and I don't mean to be negative. I think there's a lot of people trying to make a difference. I really, really do. I really think there's a lot of goodwill and amazing artists out there and companies out there trying to provide opportunity. And that's really important. But I do think at a certain point, we're going to have to confront the fact that if we want to talk about having careers, or the idea of having a career, then that cannot be predicated upon an industry that has forced us into a free-range gig economy. That is not a thing. They don't coexist, those two things. So I think it's a much larger conversation about how we actually promote infrastructure, be it centralized or decentralized.
Some excellent points there, Peter. What a thought-provoking discussion, and I think you'd all agree that we could talk on this subject for hours. However, I must call a halt as we need to move on to our second and final debate of the evening. But before we do, I would like to take a moment to remind our viewers at home to please join the conversation and let your thoughts be heard in the comments down below. We do want to hear from you, so please let us know what you think. On to our final motion, and one that I know everyone is talking about. Digital theatre. Is it a movement? Liz, I'm going to start with you for this one, given your current show is being streamed. What do you think have been the pros and cons thus far of digital platforms and streaming?
Well, I just think that we've all had to, I suppose, learn so quickly this year, and actually I feel like I'm still sort of processing that. You know, it's hard to know. I think in certain ways this necessity to move to film in this way, you know, there is that sense, I suppose, of audience and reaching more people in a slightly more democratic, in a more democratic way. I suppose there is that access. Also, there is also that pressure, you know, like it's very important. Like I've felt a real pressure with all the projects that have moved online. Like it has to be done really well. So it's kind of, you know, and that's hard because we're also used to a standard in film. Like, you know, when we look at film, we look at things with budgets of millions of euros. So of course we're never in that sort of, we're never in that field. So yeah, I think there is that pressure. I suppose going forward, a lot of people at the moment are talking about, of course, live shows with then the possibility of, you know, also live streaming and film at the same time. And I think that's brilliant, but I also know that the reality of that is sort of massive. And trying to, just at the moment being in something where I'm kind of trying to do both, make a live show and having just made a film of it, yeah, it's a huge undertaking. So I suppose there just is that sense of like, will that be something that can be sustained going forward? I suppose is a question.
It's exactly the question. Thank you. You touched on something there, and Pete, I'm going to come to you for this. As you've mentioned, Liz, some companies and venues have started streaming sort of these hybrid events, combining elements of both, you know, live and streaming. Do you think this is the contingency plan for events as we try to restart? Pete Jordan.
I don't know, but I do definitely think it's going to be part of what we do moving forward. I completely agree with what Liz is saying is the difficulty, but I can't see any other way around it, and especially when you look at touring, you know, and how that voice travels, and even when we look at it now, it's like, well, who are our peers? Well, you're looking at peers on a national level, on an international level, and everybody wants to get their work seen by as many people as possible, and it's such a it's a brilliant platform to be able to do that, but there are significant issues with how you achieve that, you know. So again, it's contingency, it's what your core element is, and if that's live, then how do you protect that? You know, I think I think we did miss a beat through the year about how we actually look at outdoor work and how we really push that forward as a form. And I think there's been massive investment in concrete buildings, and we've thrown our pot in with that, which maybe is a pity in some respects. But I can't see digital moving anywhere else but with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it would be fair to say that the last year has been something of a revolution, in creating work for COVID times. As you were saying, so many of us have had to develop these new skills, but it has also brought about exciting collaborations. I mean, it's almost become its own genre of work, and there's no question that in terms of access, overall, positive strides have been made. Bearing all that in mind, Romy, I'm going to come to you for this one. Should digital theatre stay? A big one.
Na 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 na. So should anything stay? I guess I'm in the process of working on a digital piece as well as other things. I find it's definitely a different type of endeavor that can be called digital theater, but it's not theater. So it's not a replacement, it's something else. I really believe in the potential of hybrid and even in the access that creates. I was recently in the O'Donoghue Theatre in Galway from my room, my office here in Monaghan, and I was even, like some of us that were there, we were projected on stage then, and then we could, it can create a sense of really being in a theater in some shape or form, but at the same time, stay when, how, like, is COVID gonna say, everything, it's good in measure, I guess. Like, nothing needs to replace anything or be considered as something to totally worship now, and it's the only thing. I feel like there is definitely more need of attention for open air events and even just live performance in the street as well, as for sure.
Absolutely, I wholeheartedly agree that I am only dying to go to some outdoor events this summer, so I'm really hanging on to hope that is going to be the case. Coming back to you, Pete Jordan, if we take it that digital theatre is here to stay beyond COVID, do you think venues or companies should be future-proofing themselves by investing in and developing their capacity for streaming and digital work on a long-term basis?
Yeah, look, definitely. I mean, as a sector, we got massively funded this year, which is for years and years and years, we've had nothing. So now we talk about a massive investment in digital work, which is great, but our theatres need massive infrastructure rollout as well. I mean, as a sector, we've been underfunded for way too long. So maybe over the course of the year, we see the merit as an investment in us as a in what we do. So we're coming from a really low base, and I know we talk about career development, and I've been at this like more than 20 years, and I started in a FOSS scheme in Mockness like 20 years ago or 24 years ago or whatever, with nothing, and went through the recession with nothing. So there is a cycle here of having nothing on a continuous basis. So I think any future investment into digital is brilliant, yes, but we have other things we need to spend money on as well when you go back into a theatre. Our theatres generally, if you tour internationally, we are operating at a very low base, and that's the reality of it. And there are some great venues in there, but there's too few of them. And then if you want to bring in brilliant practitioners and brilliant designers and brilliant directors and allow them to achieve everything that they want to achieve, you need to be able to give them everything. And at the moment, we are failing miserably, and we were failing before this pandemic came along. So digital, yes, but we need more of that.
Liz, do you have anything to add to that? Do you think venues or companies should be investing in digital or streaming?
Well, I think, I can't speak for venues in terms of, and I suppose, again, similar to what Pete was saying, it's just, I think it's really hard to look too far into the future. We're sort of just surviving what's been a really full-on time, And yes, you know, the extra support this year has made it really possible. So in a way, it's just really hard. It's really hard to know. I think time will tell a little bit. I know that's impossible for how do you plan going forward. But yeah, I think, like, I agree that there is just that sense of, I think there needs to be a time when people, I suppose, just really process what has just happened, you know, and take our time, because already things are ramping up. Already we're moving really quickly now. It feels like things are sort of coming back. But I also think we have to think about what we're coming back to, and, you know, maybe some of the lessons from this challenging year, and yeah, I suppose, yeah, like what that means going forward.
For sure. Perspective, I suppose, is going to be key in all of this, isn't it? When we have a bit of perspective, because I suppose we are, let's face it, we're still very much in it at the moment. Though there is no doubt in my mind that this is a debate that is far from over, I'm afraid that is all we have time for. Thank you so much to all our guests for joining us this evening. Pete, Jordan, Liz, Peter Power and Romy. It has been such a pleasure chatting with all of you, and I do hope you'll all come back again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Risk. It's a word all of us who work in theatre know very well. People say it's a risky career. Not a single event happens without a full and complete risk assessment. Every piece of work we put out in the world carries a bit of personal risk. Some might say that every day we pursue this career is a risk. Risk is something we are used to. Everything we do is bound up in recognizing and mitigating risks. It's a constant companion, ensuring that every event goes off without a hitch, that the work we make is relevant and exciting, and guaranteeing many sleepless nights or moments of anxiety around our financial security. It has often been strange and frustrating this past year to hear so much talk of risk and contingency. How many of us have made jokes or memes about how everything would be sorted out so much quicker if they just put our nation of stage managers and production managers in charge? A true word is often spoken in jest. As we push forward towards the reopening of events, I can't help but feel hopeful and positive. We as an industry have proven beyond any doubt in the last year that we are adaptable and clever and resourceful. If ever there was a bunch of individuals more equipped to mitigate risk and embrace contingency, it's the live event sector. In saying that, we also have to be realistic, and there is one risk that is beyond our control. The risk that involves those sleepless nights. This industry is not run by slaves. Nothing happens for free. Therefore, it is imperative that those with the power must help us to mitigate that risk and create a contingency plan that we can use. I would like to speak directly for a moment to Minister Catherine Martin, to our Taoiseach Leo Varadkar and Taoiseach Micheál Martin. Unlike many other industries, bars, hotels and restaurants and so on, this industry is full to the brim of individuals who are absolute experts in mitigating risks every single day. You cannot so much as eat a sandwich on stage without completing a full and concise risk assessment. Not a single member of the public can walk into any event, be it in a small pub theatre, the Three Arena, or even the National Ploughing Championship, without weeks and months of planning for every possible moment they are in that space, taking into account and planning for all the variables and worst-case scenarios that could potentially happen to them. If you really are concerned for the safety of the public, Hear us when we say we know how to do this. Hear us when we say we know how to make it happen. Hear us when we say that we know how to mitigate risk and embrace contingency. Please give us the support we need and let us do what we do best. That's it from us at TheatreMaker at the Axis Media Hub in Ballymun. Thank you to Axis and Dublin City Council for making our new programming possible. We'll see you on Monday for Irish Theatre This Week and 2 weeks from today for the next Stage Door Live. Thank you and good night. Fon slán gach duine.